Are you wondering how to stay connected on your next trip to Italy? Are you confused about using your phone? Are you worried that you might spend too much?
Well, in this video, we'll show you how to use your cell phone like a seasoned traveler.
We'll answer the top 10 questions we get so you can have an amazing trip.
And at the end, we've got 2 bonus tips for you, so stick around until then. So here are the top 10 questions we always get asked.
Can I use the Wi-Fi in my hotel and cafes to stay connected?
Can I rely on my current cell phone plan in the US to be used in Italy?
How does an Italian cell phone plan work?
And is it a hassle to get an Italian plan?
Will the Italian plan cover calling, data, and texts?
And how do I go about getting an Italian cell phone plan?
What companies offer plans for tourists and how do they compare?
And oh, by the way, I've heard of SIMs, SIM cards, and eSims. What are they and what's the difference?
If I want an Italian phone plan, what factors should I consider in making my decision?
And finally, which of those plans would you recommend? This whole phone thing can get pretty complicated, so our objective is to eliminate any concerns you have so that you can have a wonderful and relaxing trip.
We're going to give you some specific examples and recommendations on some services, but I want you to know that this video isn't sponsored in any way. The information is based on our experience, our knowledge, our research as seasoned travelers and part-time residents in Italy.
So let's jump in.
Question number 1. Can I just use the Wi-Fi in my hotel and cafes to stay connected?
Yes, you can, but you may not want to, because we've gotten so used to using our cell phones for just about everything that you don't even realize what you might need it for. For example, you want to use the GPS so you can find your way around. You want to be able to find out information about the museums or other sites that you're visiting. You may need your phone to get a taxi, an Uber, or other ride share, or to make a restaurant reservation, or simply to entertain yourself when you've got a break and nothing else going on.
Also, public Wi-Fi is much less available in Italy than it is in the US. And even in hotels, the service is spotty and can be at low speeds. You might only get coverage in the lobby, in certain rooms of the hotel, or even only on one side of the room that you're in.
So can I just rely on the US phone plan that I have to get the coverage I need in Italy?
You certainly can, but it might be expensive, particularly if you're there a long time or you have a large group, because Italian cell phone service is unbelievably low compared to US prices.
So we're going to quote you some cost and comparisons here, and this is as of April 2024. So if you're looking at this much later, things may have changed.
Speaking first about AT&T, their program is called International Day Pass, and it costs $10 a day for each day that you use the service, with a maximum of $100 for each billing cycle. That gives you the same number of calls, data, texts as you'd have on your US plan. It is something you need to sign up for online or over the phone with AT&T before you go, because you don't want to have to pay by the minute rates.
So the key thing to know is if you don't sign up for it, the cost can get absolutely outrageous. For example, $2 a minute for phone calls and over $2,000 per gigabyte of data. Now, a gigabyte may sound like a lot to some people, but you actually would go through 1 gig of data just watching a 2-hour movie on Netflix or spending an hour on TikTok.
The cost is just outrageous.
So we'll link to a data usage calculator in the description box below so you can calculate exactly what amount of data you think you're going to need and how much that'll cost.
The second company we're going to talk about is Verizon, and they have a very similar program to AT&T. They have a day-by-day program called Travel Pass that's $10 a day, but it's unclear whether there's a maximum on that. The second Verizon option is called International Monthly Pass. It's $100 and it provides unlimited data and text and 250 minutes of calls.
But again, if you don't sign up for it and you just use your phone over there, you're going to get those crazy outrageous charges of $2 a minute for calls and $2,000 per gigabyte of data.
The third option is T-Mobile. And if you're lucky enough to be a T-Mobile customer, you may already have a very good plan. Most of their programs come with 5 gigabytes of data, unlimited text, and voice at 25 cents a minute.
And you can always buy more data. For example, you can get, for $5, you can get half a gigabyte of data, and for $50, you can get 15 gigabytes of data and add it on.
And all these bonus plans, extra plans, provide unlimited calls. So especially if you're a T-Mobile customer, using your current plan makes a lot of sense. However, these plans do change, and I would verify my coverage before I went. So here's the bottom line on US plans. It's a perfectly good option if you're comfortable with the amount of money you're going to have to spend for the amount of data you're going to need to use.
But if you want to have a more economical plan, it might be worth checking into getting an Italian cell phone plan.
How does an Italian cell phone plan work?
Well, most of the Italian cell phone companies have a specific plan just for tourists. It's short term, up to 30 days, widely available. I mean, you can get them anywhere, particularly if you're with a big company. They have stores all over the place, and they're very inexpensive, much less expensive than a US plan.
But won't it be a hassle to get an Italian plan?
No, not really. All you need is your passport, 10 to 15 minutes of your time to go into the store, fill out a form, and get it all set up. And in fact, in some cases, you can actually sign up online.
Here's a critical point. You have to have an unlocked phone. And what an unlocked phone means is it's not tied to a specific carrier like AT&T or Verizon through a contract that you pay off over a number of months. Now, most people have that, so their phone is locked to a particular provider. But you could have bought your phone unlocked, particularly if you bought it in something like an Apple store or Best Buy, where you're buying the device separate from the plan.
Even if you have a locked phone, in other words, you bought it from Verizon or AT&T as part of a contract, you may actually have paid off a 2-year contract and be eligible to get the phone unlocked. You can always ask them.
And you also may be able to ask them if you could pay it off early to get it unlocked.
Right. And if all else fails and you can't get your current phone unlocked, I bet that you have an old phone hanging around the house somewhere, because we sure do, that you could take to Italy and use that phone to get your Italian phone plan.
If I get an Italian plan, will it cover data, voice, and text?
Data is the most critical thing, because without it, you can't use the internet everywhere you go. You're forced to rely on the Wi-Fi in your hotel, for example. But the good thing is that all the plans cover data.
Some plans include voice, and that's really good because you could use it to call back to the US or to make a reservation in a restaurant.
Right. Now, pro tip, if you get an Italian cell phone plan, make sure you tell your family and friends back home what your Italian phone number is, and it will start with a +39, which is the area code in Italy. So if they see a +39 number pop up on their phone, they'll know it's from you. Otherwise, they will have no idea.
So we covered data and voice. How about texting?
Now, texting is interesting because texting is actually handled quite differently in Italy as well as the rest of Europe. All Europeans are partial to something called WhatsApp. And WhatsApp is an app that you put on your phone, and you're able to message people using the internet. So it's totally free, whereas texting, at least historically, was very expensive in Europe. Not sure if it still is today, but the fact is all Europeans use WhatsApp. So that's something you're going to want to download onto your phone, and anybody that you think you want to message with back in the States, you could actually ask them to download WhatsApp onto their phones as well. And it's very easy to use.
And as far as making reservations in restaurants and other places, many places provide their WhatsApp number, so you can send them a message in English that they'll be able to understand and respond to you. So next, let's talk about how to get an Italian plan that's right for you.
But first, if you're new here, I'm Ann and he's Ed, and we're from our big Italian adventure. We live and travel in Italy half the year, and the objective of our channel is to help you have an unforgettable trip to Italy. Okay, so how do I go about getting one of these Italian phone plans?
Well, you've got three options. The first one is to buy it in a store, and you'll find stores all over, and that's where you'll find the cheapest plans. And another big advantage, I think, is that you'll have the peace of mind that the phone works. Before you leave the store, you can check. And then you're also able to get personal attention, because you'll find in cell phone stores it's mostly young people and they speak English these days.
Yeah, not to worry. Okay, so your second option is to get it at the airport when you land in Italy. But the disadvantages there are, number one, it's likely to be quite a bit more expensive than if you bought it at a phone store in town. And also, they're usually much busier. They're usually long lines, and you'll have to wait a long time, which is probably the last thing you want to do when you've been traveling overnight for many hours and you're tired.
The third option is to get it online, and that can be very convenient. But note that all these plans are data only. There's no voice. They're often more expensive unless you're using a very small amount of data. Now, we don't have personal experience with buying them online, so we'll link you to an article that explains that process more in depth.
Okay. So which companies offer specific phone plans for tourists, and how do they work?
One Italian option is the company TIM, that we would pronounce Tim, but the Italians pronounce Team. And their plan is Team Tourist. And some of the advantages of that plan is there's a lot of data, 100 gigabytes of data at high speed, at 5G, unlimited calls in Italy, 250 minutes of international calls, including back to the US. And all of this costs 25 euros for 30 days.
Now, you can buy this either online or in store, but a con is that if you get it online, you still have to take this PIN code into the store to actually get your plan or your SIM installed on your phone.
The second company is called Vodafone, and their program is called eSIM Europe. And its big advantage is it's good for small amounts of data over a short period of time.
Now, there's a con to this program, and it is a big one, because this plan is data only, no phone calls. Okay, and not only that, it's more expensive. You pay more and you get less data.
So they offer plans that are from 5 gig to 20 gig that are 13 euro up to 35 euro.
The third option is a company called Windtray, and their plan is called Tourist Pass Full.
And it provides 70 gigs of high-speed data, 5G, using over 30 days. You get 100 international minutes of voice, including to the US, and it costs 25 euros for those 30 days.
Now, the cons with this program are there are not very many Windtray stores around. You may have difficulty finding them, and you can't buy the plan online. You have to go into a store.
By the way, I've heard of SIM cards and eSIMs. Can you explain those to me?
So a SIM card is a teeny tiny little card that has all the data in it that goes in a slot in the side of your phone. And so it's a physical card that has been used for years and is still used. But an eSIM is a newer thing, and that's just really some data that gets put onto your phone that has all that same identifying information.
Now, the functionality of these two approaches, the eSIM and the SIM card, are exactly the same. The purpose of this is to identify your phone to the cellular network. It's got your number and some other information about your phone on it.
So which phones use a SIM card, a physical SIM card, and which ones use an eSIM?
Well, most newer phones, an eSIM is an available option. For example, an iPhone, anything after an iPhone 10 can be used with an eSIM, and in fact, an iPhone 14 and later has to have an eSIM. Now, Android is a bit more complicated because of the different manufacturers. I'd recommend that you Google it to see what your phone is, or even verify it with your carrier, what kind of SIM would be used in your phone.
So if I want an Italian phone plan, what factors should I consider as I'm going to make a choice?
Two of the big ones are how much it's going to cost and how long you need the plan for, obviously. And the second is how much data do you need?
So remember, we've put a data usage calculator down in the description box below so you can figure out how much data you need. And remember, a gigabyte of data will only get you one movie on Netflix.
If I had to make a guess for adults, I would say get at least 3 gigabytes a person for data. Now, if you've got teenagers or young people involved, you're going to need a lot more because of their amount of streaming and other services.
They are data hogs. So after all of that information, what plan do you recommend?
We would recommend buying a plan that has both data and voice, and buying it in a store rather than online, for the reasons we talked about before, being assured that it's going to work and getting lower costs.
So which plan would you get? Which company would you go with?
We would recommend going with the Team Tourist plan. You get the 100 gigabytes of data for the €25 a month. They have lots of stores, and we personally have used Tim and have been very satisfied with their service.
We hope all this information has been helpful. Now, we promised you a couple of extra bonus tips, so here they are.
First, how can you charge your phone in Italy? Do you need an adapter or a converter?
You really only need an adapter. You do not need a voltage converter for your phone or for your computer.
Now, the only tricky thing about plugging it in is the Italian system uses 2-prong plugs and 3-prong plugs. So what you're going to want is have an adapter that can deal with both, or have separate adapters. Now, you'd also like to have one that provides not only a connection for a regular power cord, but for some USB outlets as well. And we'll put in the description one that we recommend that we've been successful with.
A word of warning about outlets in hotel rooms. Now, this is not a problem if you're in a modern big hotel, but if you're in a smaller hotel or an Airbnb in an older building, there may only be one outlet, or maybe if you're lucky, 2 outlets in your room. So it might be a good idea to bring an extension cord with you.
You've probably already thought of this, but you certainly want to bring a battery pack. And you can get those in a variety of sizes and powers. We have a small one and a medium-sized one that we've been very pleased with, and we'll put the link to that in the description. The second tip would be, what if my phone gets lost or I get pickpocketed?
Okay, so if you lose your phone and you want someone to return it to you, and there are many kind souls who would return it, they have to know who to return it to. So before you go on a trip, I recommend putting your name and your email and the phone number of a companion on the home screen, so that when they pick it up and it goes on, it'll show that information and they can return it to you.
And the way you do that is to say, take a picture of yourself, and then with an app, put that text on top of it, and then set it as your lock screen image.
Yeah. So what if my phone is actually stolen?
Well, one thing that can prevent the thief from getting into your phone and data is if your lock screen turns your phone off and requires your passcode within no more than 1 to 3 minutes. And Apple has a new feature called Stolen Device Protection. I'll put the steps to activate that on your phone in the description.
That was a lot of info, but if you have additional questions, please put them in the comments below and we'll do our best to answer them.
Now that you know how cell phones work in Italy, you're going to want to understand how the train system works. So we've got this video for you.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.